What would happen if the most ruthless judge in reality TV took total control of the biggest industry rebel of 2026? A partnership between Simon Cowell and Jamal Roberts would either build a billion-dollar empire or completely destroy the music business. How would the most formidable architect of the reality television music complex manage the unprecedented rebellion of this decade's most controversial breakout artist? When analyzing the chaotic 2026 career trajectory of American Idol champion Jamal Roberts, media analysts frequently debate a fascinating hypothetical scenario. What would have occurred if Simon Cowell, the notoriously strict executive who practically invented the modern televised singing competition, had been directly responsible for managing Roberts' initial recording contract? The resulting dynamic presents a complex case study in the friction between undeniable raw talent and billion-dollar corporate control structures. Cowell possesses a heavily documented history of demanding absolute commercial viability, frequently operating as the ultimate gatekeeper of the mainstream pop industry. Conversely, Roberts has recently proven himself to be a fiercely independent creator, famously dismantling his relationship with his parent label to protect his creative autonomy. By examining Cowell's established operational methodology against Roberts' recent strategic maneuvers, investigative journalists can project exactly how this high-stakes partnership would have unfolded. Rather than a simple story of executive dominance, the hypothetical intersection of these two highly ambitious figures exposes the fragile realities of the modern entertainment ecosystem. It forces industry watchdogs to question whether a deeply authentic, organically gifted vocalist can ever truly coexist within a highly centralized, heavily managed corporate infrastructure without initiating a massive structural breakdown. Does the traditional boardroom approach to commercial talent evaluation fundamentally misunderstand the specific, unedited artistic value that a veteran television judge actively seeks? To accurately project the hypothetical professional relationship between these two figures, we must first examine the initial talent discovery phase. When Roberts originally secured his national broadcast victory, his appeal was entirely predicated on a deeply emotional, unpolished vocal delivery. Contemporary label executives immediately attempted to surround his voice with heavy instrumental backing tracks and complex production techniques. However, a veteran media architect like Simon Cowell utilizes a drastically different evaluation metric. Throughout his extensive broadcasting tenure, Cowell has consistently halted heavily produced auditions, instructing the performer to deliver an entirely unedited, acoustic vocal performance. He understands that true, multi-generational superstar potential cannot be synthetically engineered. It must be proven organically. Consequently, media analysts suggest that Cowell would have instantly recognized the unique commercial value of Roberts' gritty Mississippi soul sound. Instead of masking the vocalist's natural texture behind generic radio formulas, an experienced executive would have actively highlighted the unpolished elements. Cowell would have strategically utilized the sheer, unadulterated power of Roberts' raw vocal performances to immediately differentiate him from the highly processed, algorithmically generated pop artists currently saturating the digital streaming marketplace. By prioritizing acoustic authenticity over digital manipulation, Cowell would have ensured that the foundational consumer trust established during the television broadcast was never compromised, laying the groundwork for a highly devoted, long-term consumer base. Would a seasoned industry kingmaker have authorized the highly controversial, heavily synthesized commercial debut that nearly derailed a promising new career earlier this year? A critical point of historical divergence in this hypothetical analysis centers on the disastrous commercial rollout executed by Roberts' actual recording label in 2025. Following his television coronation, corporate management forced Roberts to release a heavily auto-tuned, generic pop single that entirely erased his authentic sonic identity, sparking immediate and massive consumer outrage. Investigative journalists covering the entertainment sector widely agree that Simon Cowell would have vehemently vetoed this specific production strategy. Cowell has spent decades publicly criticizing out-of-touch, boardroom-driven audio production, frequently utilizing his television platform to mock executives who attempt to force organic singers into manufactured, robotic templates. He intimately understands that aggressively homogenizing a unique vocal talent is a fundamentally flawed financial strategy that permanently alienates the established core audience. If Cowell were dictating the creative direction, he would have likely terminated the producers responsible for diluting Roberts' most valuable asset. A sophisticated industry veteran recognizes that while synthetic, trend-chasing tracks might secure temporary playlist placement, establishing a lucrative, multi-decade career requires preserving the precise artistic elements that generated the initial public investment. Therefore, Cowell would have mandated a stripped-down, emotionally resonant debut project. What occurs when the rigid legal parameters of a standard 360-degree management agreement directly collide with an inherently autonomous, fiercely independent creative entity? Despite the theoretical alignment regarding musical production, the administrative reality of a partnership between Cowell and Roberts would inevitably generate severe structural friction. Cowell is widely recognized by financial analysts as one of the primary architects of the comprehensive 360-degree reality television contract. He constructed his formidable global empire by demanding absolute corporate loyalty and retaining massive operational control over the artists operating within his infrastructure. This highly centralized management philosophy directly contradicts the core operational methodology that Roberts has exhibited throughout his 2026 industry rebellion. Roberts is a highly strategic, independently minded creator who ultimately refused to operate as a compliant, highly managed corporate asset. The inherent tension between an executive demanding absolute contractual adherence and an artist refusing to surrender their operational autonomy would quickly create a highly volatile administrative environment. Taking direct orders from a corporate boardroom, even one commanded by a historically successful media mogul, would likely have pushed Roberts to his absolute breaking point at a significantly accelerated rate. The resulting internal conflict would highlight the inherent limitations of the traditional reality television business model, exposing the difficulty of managing a modern artist who possesses both exceptional talent and an uncompromising demand for operational sovereignty. How does traditional entertainment management interpret an artist's sudden disappearance and unauthorized liquidation of personal capital to fund a private recording facility? The breaking point in this hypothetical corporate relationship would mirror the explosive actions Roberts recently took against his actual parent label. When Roberts deliberately withdrew from the Hollywood promotional apparatus to covertly construct a fully independent, off-the-grid recording studio, the established industry structure fundamentally panicked. However, an executive of Simon Cowell's caliber would process this unapproved strategic maneuver through a distinctly different administrative lens. Rather than viewing the sudden departure solely as an erratic breach of contract, a veteran media titan would immediately recognize the action as a highly calculated, high-stakes declaration of corporate warfare. Cowell, a self-made billionaire who built his empire through ruthless negotiation and aggressive market disruption, would understand the sheer magnitude of Roberts' ambition. The ensuing media fallout would be unprecedented, characterized by aggressive legal posturing and intense public relations battles for narrative dominance. Cowell possesses a famously low tolerance for contractual insubordination, and watching his premier artist execute a rogue, independent operation would undoubtedly trigger a massive, heavily capitalized battle for absolute operational control. The public would witness a fascinating power struggle between the industry's most entrenched traditionalist and its most capable modern disruptor. When an independent audio release successfully bypasses established corporate distribution channels to secure global chart dominance, how must a veteran executive pragmatically react? The climax of this hypothetical industry narrative occurs at the precise moment Jamal Roberts, validates his independent rebellion through undeniable commercial metrics. In reality, Roberts bypassed the heavily subsidized corporate pop radio playlists, releasing a self-produced track that rapidly achieved massive viral acceleration and secured premier chart placements driven entirely by organic consumer demand. For a highly pragmatic, data-driven executive like Simon Cowell, this specific level of verifiable, independent market dominance fundamentally alters the operational calculus. Cowell respects concrete numerical achievements and overwhelming audience response significantly more than he values maintaining rigid administrative protocols. Analysts assert that witnessing an artist successfully paralyze the global charts without utilizing a major label marketing budget would force an immediate, highly calculated strategic pivot. Rather than wasting millions of dollars attempting to crush a demonstrably unstoppable independent movement in a protracted legal battle, Cowell would rapidly initiate high-level negotiations. Recognizing a brilliant power play from a highly capable adversary, the veteran executive would likely be the first individual attempting to secure a highly lucrative, equal partnership distribution agreement, attempting to integrate the independent success into his broader corporate portfolio. Could the hypothetical alliance between a notoriously strict media mogul and a fiercely independent musical entrepreneur fundamentally alter the established modern entertainment landscape? In finalizing this comprehensive evaluation, media analysts reach a fascinating conclusion regarding the ultimate potential of a Cowell and Roberts partnership. There is absolute consensus that Cowell possesses the specific marketing infrastructure and global influence required to elevate Roberts to unprecedented levels of international stardom. However, the trajectory of that success would deviate significantly from the traditional corporate blueprint. The combination of Roberts' undeniable, raw vocal power and Cowell's famously cutthroat, highly strategic marketing genius presents a formula for absolute industry domination. Yet the critical variable remains the uncompromising demand for control exhibited by both individuals. If they manage to establish a functional operational truce, they would bypass standard hit generation to build an unstoppable, highly lucrative independent media empire that operates entirely outside the legacy recording label system. Conversely, if their massive professional egos proved fundamentally incompatible, the resulting conflict would likely result in an explosive, highly public collapse that could permanently destabilize the traditional reality television pipeline. Ultimately, this hypothetical scenario forces consumers to critically evaluate whether a truly authentic, sovereign artist can ever successfully navigate a long-term professional relationship with a mastermind dedicated to absolute corporate optimization.